California Palisades wildfire. On October 8, U.S. authorities announced the arrest of Jonathan Rinderknecht, 29, in Florida for allegedly starting the Palisades fire in California, one of the most devastating fires in Los Angeles' history. The fire began as a smaller blaze, the Lockman Fire, on January 1 near a hiking trail in Pacific Palisades, shortly after Rinderknecht finished an Uber shift. Though initially thought to be extinguished, the fire reignited on January 7 after smoldering underground and evolved into the Palisades Fire. The fire burned over 23,000 acres, destroyed around 6,000 structures, and caused an estimated $150 billion in damages, ravaging areas including Pacific Palisades, Topanga, and Malibu. It also coincided with the nearby Eaton Fire. Evidence against Rinderknecht includes cell phone data placing him alone at the ignition site, 911 calls he made to report the fire, video recordings he took of firefighters battling the blaze, a ChatGPT query during the 911 call asking if one is at fault for a fire caused by cigarettes, to which the app responded yes, conflicting statements about whether he smoked near the trail. Federal investigators concluded the fire was likely started by a lighter igniting combustible material. Rinderknecht, who once lived in the area, now faces a federal arson charge due to the fire burning federal land, a crime punishable by up to 20 years in prison. He will be transferred to California to stand trial. The $99 million wine Ponzi scam perpetrated by British white man. A British white man, James Wellesley, 59 years of age, has pleaded guilty in a New York federal court to involvement in a nearly $100 million wire fraud conspiracy related to fictitious wine investments. Wellesley, also known as Andrew Fuller, pleaded guilty to wire fraud conspiracy before U.S. District Judge Pamela Chen. He and his co-defendant, Stephen Burton, 61 years of age, posed as executives at Bordeaux Cellars, an alleged wine company registered in London and Hong Kong that invested in vintage wines. The pair raised $99.4 million from investors by promising them regular interest payments from loans supposedly given to high-net-worth wine collectors. They falsely claimed the loans were secured by an inventory of over 25,000 bottles of valuable wine. Prosecutors stated the company controlled far fewer bottles, at times as few as 217, and that the defendants used the loan money for personal expenses and to pay interest to some investors to keep the scheme running. The fraud operated from June 2017 to February 2019 before collapsing when payments ceased. Wellesley, who fought an unsuccessful extradition from the UK, remains jailed in Brooklyn. Under recommended federal guidelines, he could face 10 to 12.5 years in prison and has agreed to forfeit $1 million plus funds in more than 24 bank accounts. His co-defendant, Stephen Burton, pleaded guilty in July to wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering conspiracy, accepting a $26 million forfeiture order. Wellesley's sentencing is scheduled for February 3, and Burton's is set for January 6, 2026. Marcin Laskowski sentenced to 14 years for child sex offenses. Marcin Laskowski, 39, was sentenced yesterday, Tuesday, October 7, at Liverpool Crown Court to 14 years in prison with an additional 6 years extended license for child sex offenses committed in Southport, UK this past January. Laskowski, who had been living in Southport, was found guilty in July of 2 counts of the R-word, assault by penetration, and sexual activity with a girl aged 13 to 15. The victim was a 14-year-old girl whom Laskowski had met by chance in Southport town center and offered a place to stay, where the crimes took place despite her pleas for him to stop. In addition to the custodial sentence, Laskowski received an indefinite restraining order against the victim, an indefinite sexual harm prevention order, the requirement to sign the sex offender register for life. Detective Inspector Tony Meekins of the Child and Criminal Sexual Exploitation Team commended the immense courage and bravery of the victim and her family throughout the investigation. He emphasized that the sentence removes Laskowski from the streets and expressed hope that he would use the prison time to reflect on his abhorrent behavior. Strip club manager found unalive in the middle of the street in San Francisco. Mark Calcagni, who was 60 years of age and the longtime general manager of the famous Condor Club in San Francisco, was found unalive from gunshots in the middle of a street in Santa Rosa, California, last Friday morning, the 3rd of October. Calcagni, who also once managed the Vanity San Francisco strip club, was discovered on Brookwood Avenue, about 350 feet from his home. He was pronounced unalive at the scene. The Condor Club is notable for claiming to be the first topless bar in the U.S., having opened in 1964. As of Monday, Santa Rosa police had not made any arrests, publicly identified any suspects, or recovered a firearm linked to the shooting. British Caucasian man stabs girlfriend during domestic dispute. Michael Ormondy, age 34, of Litherland, UK, is currently on trial at Liverpool Crown Court, accused of the unaliving of his partner, Rebecca Campbell, age 32, who was unalived after a sustained and violent assault involving 18 stab wounds in her home at Knowsley Heights in Huyton on April 15. Ms. Campbell told neighbors, who rushed to her aid, "My fella stabbed me," before collapsing. She later asked a police officer in the ambulance, "Am I gonna die?" Ormondy denies the murder charge, claiming he acted in self-defense. Less than 2 hours after the incident, Ormondy called the police non-emergency line, admitting to the stabbing but claiming self-defense. In the recorded call, he made violent threats related to his dogs: "If they touch my dogs, I'm going to start unaliving police officers, one by one. I'll start unaliving, one by one. My dogs are my babies." He was arrested minutes later on a canal towpath after throwing his mobile phone into the water. Upon arrest, he made another comment to officers, referencing prior domestic incidents: "This wouldn't have happened if you did your job last week." Fatal fire and shooting in Bracebridge, Ontario. On the evening of Friday, August 1, Ontario Provincial Police responded to a report of gunfire at a rural residence on Beatrice Town Line Road in Bracebridge. Upon arrival, officers found an unalived male outside and the home fully engulfed in flames. The investigation has since revealed a total of 3 bodies at the property. The initial male victim found outside and 2 additional bodies found inside the burned home on Sunday. The identities of the 2 bodies found inside the residence had not yet been confirmed, and post-mortem examinations were pending. At the time, police were still searching for a suspect wanted for murder. Mitchell Gray, 29, of Bracebridge. He is described as white, 5'8", with light brown hair and facial hair. It was later confirmed that the murder suspect, Mitchell Gray, who was wanted following a fatal shooting and arson in Bracebridge, Ontario, was identified as one of 2 people found unalive inside the burned-out home. Southport, Florida man who sexually battered and molested child is given 3 life sentences. Shane Clinton McKinney, age 44, of Southport, Florida, was sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences on July 22, 2025, as announced by State Attorney Larry Bassford. McKinney was found guilty in June of 2025 of sexual battery on a person less than 12 years of age and 3 counts of lewd and lascivious molestation. The charges related to the sexual assault and molestation of a young girl multiple times over a 3-year period, spanning from the beginning of 2017 to the end of 2020. Circuit Court Judge Brantley Clark followed the prosecutor's request for the maximum penalty, ordering concurrent life sentences on 3 of the charges, plus a 15-year sentence on the 4th. The conviction followed an investigation by the Bay County Sheriff's Office, with critical evidence provided by the Gulf Coast Children's Advocacy Center.